Welcome everyone and greetings from Costa Rica. I'm Miriam Vilela, Executive Director of the Earthcharter International. And first I want to let you know that this is, I'm really happy to have this gathering here today. This is actually our second webinar session of a series that we are calling East and West Dialogue on Ecological Civilization. We are organizing this to offer an opportunity to explore, for all of us, to explore what ecological civilization is or how it could look like and what it means to work, for all of us to work towards an ecological civilization, the vision of an ecological civilization. We know that several people have been working on this for several years. We basically want to address this through a multicultural lens or an intercultural dialogue. We deeply value that. With this, we want to invite you to also consider the Earthcharter as a valuable ethical foundation for ecological civilizations. The first webinar of this series took place 2 months ago in November. And in fact, 3 years ago, we organized a series of 4 webinars on ecological civilization. All the recordings of these dialogues can be found on YouTube. The effort this time is organized as a collaborative effort between the Institute of Ecological Civilization, the Center for Process Studies, the Wellbeing Economic Alliance, the Club of Rome, China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. We're very happy to join efforts among all these organizations. And I want to thank each of these organizations, but also especially the speakers and our great moderators for joining us today. I really consider these webinars, this series of dialogues as preparatory process for the conference that we are convening just 2 months from now, in mid-April in Florida, that some of you are going to join us. We actually encourage anyone interested to consider joining us for this special 3 days event on reimagining education for ecological civilization. So let me now give the floor to our 2 moderators who are joining us here today, Amanda Bennett and Sifan Jiang. So please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, those of you who are joining us on Zoom, where we have a chat that you can join the conversation with from the very beginning. Tell us where you are, tell us your name, how you're doing. And we're also, thank you. Also, I want to thank our audience on the Baidu platform. And we also hope that we can see your questions and have you join the conversation as well. So today I am going to briefly introduce our panelists first, and then I will give the floor over to my co-moderator, Sifan Jiang, who is also joining us today. Thank you to everyone who has already found the chat and has told us who you are and where you're joining us from. So today, our speakers, one of the first speakers you will hear from today is Dr. Jinfeng Zhou. Dr. Zhou is Secretary General of the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, a China-based NGO participating at the leading edge of biodiversity conservation, environmental protection, and sustainable development. We are also joined by Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker, the co-founder and co-director of the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, together with John Grimm. For several years, she has been building on the work of Thomas Berry, especially through the Journey of the Universe project. We are also joined by Dr. Zhihe Wang, who is a former member of the Chinese Academy of the Social Sciences, who received his master's degree at the Western Philosophy from Peking University in China, his PhD in Philosophy of Religion from Claremont Graduate University in the United States, and is a leading figure in constructive postmodern movement in China. As co-director of the Center for Process Studies, the China Project, his major responsibility is to charge the communication between the Western process community and the Chinese community. And we also have Dr. Julia Kim, who is the program director of the Gross National Happiness Center in Bhutan. She joined the center in 2013 after serving as a member of the International Expert Working Group for a New Development Paradigm, convened by the Royal Government of Bhutan. She is also a member of the Club of Rome. And my co-moderator today is Ms. Sifan Jiang, who currently works for the Ecosystem Service Team Program Associates at Windrock International. She is a dedicated sustainability professional specializing in ESG reporting, and she has dual master's degree from the University for Peace and Johns Hopkins University. I am joining you today from Earth Charter International, from our Education Center for Education for Sustainable Development in Costa Rica, and we are very excited to have you joining this event. If it's the first event you're joining, we really welcome you, and we thank you if you have come back for another conversation in this series. Okay, so we are eager to get started. I see we have a lot of diversity in the audience as well. We have people joining us from Vermont, USA, from China, from South Korea, from Canada, California, USA, Boston, Lyme, Connecticut. So thank you so much. We have Kiyoshi joining us from Tokyo, Japan. So nice to see you all here joining us. Thank you. I know you're all eager to get started in joining this conversation. So I am going to pass the microphone to Sifan to get started with the first question.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Median, for this wonderful opportunity to have these wonderful conversations on ecological civilization. So I enjoy meeting with different experts and listen to your insights on ecological civilization from a Western and Eastern perspective. So let's get started. The first question will be, what does an ecological civilization look like for you? So I would like to invite Dr. Wang to share your idea on this question.
Thank you, Sifan. Yeah. Also, I want to express my deep appreciation for inviting me to join this webinar. It's first time to come. I found, I'm the only one person who wear glasses, look like a scholar, right? But anyway, so I see talking about ecological civilization. The reason why people expecting this new civilization, why people imagining this civilization or envisioning this civilization, not because this civilization is how perfect, but because there's really something wrong with the modern civilization. I mean the modern industrial civilization. Yeah, you can see look like nobody really feel happy with the current civilization. Even the rich people, very rich people, I don't see they feel happy. Yeah, sometimes they have either mental problem or physical problem. See, I don't think money can buy everything, right? Yeah. So that's why we come to the ecological civilization. So our IPCC, we established the first International Ecological Forum in Claremont back to 2006. That means almost 20 years. Yeah. So that's the reason why we want to promote ecological civilization. And how, in my opinion, I think the modern civilization treat a human being and every living being as a machine. That's why we have a working machine, right? And also consumer machine, shopping machine, yeah, or study machine, exam machine, right? Yeah. Look like no human being, no living beings. So everybody become machine, yeah. Just like the old civilization treat people like a tool, right? Yeah. So, but in my opinion, ecological civilization treat life as a life and value life, appreciate life, cherish life. Yeah, that is the key difference between the old civilization and the new civilization. if we put it in the more concrete way, I want to say, first, eco-civilization respects nature. Yeah. Second, eco-civilization value countryside, farmers. Yeah. Third, eco-civilization cherish community. Yeah. According to Dr. Cobb, our mentor, the greatest crime modernity made is destroyed our community. I mean, organic community, right? So I think the new civilization want to revive and flourishing the organic community. I think that's why we love to promote this new civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. And I think it's a very interesting point from industrial civilization to ecological civilization, and it really aligns with the Earth Charter's idea that respect and care for the for community and life. So that's a really good point. So let's invite Dr. Mary Tucker. Can you share your idea on this question?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Miriam, for convening us and all my co-speakers here. And I love seeing people in the chat like Paul Srivastava, who I used to teach with and now working with the Club of Rome, and Fran and David Corton and other friends. So thank you for joining us. This is, as Wang Zhihe just said, an emerging project, isn't it? We're all trying to figure out, what does this term mean? Ecological civilization, sometimes ecological culture. And I think in maybe the simplest forms that right now are bubbling up is systems thinking, of course, has been important for a very long time. So we have on the one hand, nature systems, ecology, biodiversity, and how these are interrelated systems. And ecology isn't that old as a field of study and so on, maybe 60, 70 years old, but we have this profound sense of interrelationality, organic and holistic systems emerging from the sciences. And on the other hand, we have human systems. We have new economics emerging. We have politics, green politics, and so on. We have ecological education. We have the greening of religions, so to speak. But we have human systems that are not always organic or holistic and so on, but they're trying to align with nature systems. And we can even say the Gaian systems of the whole planet and so on, and even the cosmological systems of where we've come out of. And this is the beauty of the fact that this arose in China, this term, although originally from a Soviet environmentalist as well. But how we can align human systems with nature systems. Now, regenerative economics, for example, something David is working on with John Fullerton and others. How can we get an economy that's regenerative and not destructive or extractive? And we can go on for each one of these institutional systems. Education needs to change towards an ecologically aware and creating new civilizations. Now, that's a big word, civilization. But I want to make my second point this way. How are we going to create mutually enhancing human-Earth relations, as Thomas Berry put it, mutually enhancing human-Earth relations? That's what this challenge is about. And we need, therefore, a worldview shift. A lot of people talking about paradigm shift, the great transition, the great turning, and so on. But this is why what Wang Zhihe and his wife Mei have done in China is so effective, because they're bringing the Whiteheadian idea of holistic, relational, organic thinking to bear. That's very coherent with many of the systems of thought in China, of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. And on our side, the complement would be Teilhard de Chardin and this unfolding evolutionary universe. So Teilhard and Whitehead, Berry, and others are part of this sensibility that's beginning to shift. It's going to take a long time, but with that type of shift that includes traditional environmental knowledge of indigenous peoples around the world, and the Confucian tradition that I've spent many years studying, there's a new confluence of principles, of ideas, and practicality of applications. And this is the exciting moment. Much more to be said, but let me leave it there for now. Mutually enhancing human-Earth relations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. And systems thinking definitely is needed for ecological civilization. So, Dr. Zhou, do you have any idea on this question?
Thank you. Ecological civilization is the fourth civilization of human beings. We experience the primitive civilization, agricultural civilization, and industry civilization. Now we need to start ecological civilization. This is the fourth civilization. The reason for the civilization is the sixth massive extinction. And because of the great industrial civilization we are facing, we, the planet and the human beings, are facing the sixth massive extinction. After the fifth and before 65 million years ago, dinosaur extinct. But this time, it's because of the industrial civilization we are going to extinct. And why? Why is so? And the major problem is the way of industrial civilization. And it's because of the capitalism, because of the, no matter it's free capitalism or state capitalism, that exhaust our natural resources. And because of the free market, I would like to give an example. Even during the COVID, within 1 year, China export how many hats? Export 12 billion hats within 1 year. Do we need that many? Of course we do not. But the market, the capital, need that production, need that cost of nature. We cannot live that life again. And civilization means the way of living, the way of production. We need total change. During the 2019, during the preparation for COP15 of CBD, I read to the secretary and asked them to use ecological civilization as the theme of COP15 of CBD. Why? Because after all those years, the massive extinction has not been stopped. And because red list, state protected area, doesn't work at all. And the only way we can stop our massive extinction is people's participation, is the way of living, is the way of production changed. So we need a new civilization. We need to change our way of life. We need to change our way of production. That is the only way to lead to the sustainable living of human beings on this planet. And we need biodiversity is the target. Massive extinction is the reason. And the path to the ecological. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou, and you really addressed the urgency of ecological civilization to avoid human beings from the mass extinctions. So, Dr. King, what's your idea on this question?
Thank you. You know, I think I echo a lot of the ideas and visions that have been expressed already. I think I would add to that is ecological civilization doesn't mean it is utopian either, that it's something that we're dreaming up out of some kind of false optimism. I think it's, as my colleagues have said, it's definitely a systems change, but the seeds of that change are here. It's about what we prioritize and how we decide to move forward. So it isn't this kind of escapist, let's go to the drawing board and come up with something entirely new. It's learning from the mistakes of the past. It's learning from the wisdom of the past, in many cases, rediscovering traditions and worldviews that have kept us on the right track, but we have kind of moved from that in the name of progress, in the name of market growth. So I wanted to maybe introduce that as an idea that an ecological civilization isn't somewhere in the distant future. It's in emergence now, and it's about how do we bring it forward so it has a chance to thrive, even as current systems are starting to fall apart and become unstable. So I think that's an important point. I think it's also this idea that as human beings now, we're probably much more aware of who we are and of our impact on each other in the world than we've ever been. And on the one hand, that leads to a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of the awareness of the kind of climate and social and environmental impacts that we're causing. But on the positive side, it means that we're more able than ever, if we choose to use our technology, our politics, our economic systems, our governance, we're more able than ever to move and shift in a new direction than we have in the past. So I think that's also part of it, is it encompasses a new global awareness and a new global capacity to act that we probably didn't have even 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. And I think maybe the final thing I would add is that for many of us who have been trained in academia, and I count myself in that basket, or have worked in UN agencies or in big institutions, we often tend to think that the solutions and the bright ideas will come from the experts and from technology. But I think, to cite a great systems thinker, Donella Meadows, the vision and the mindset and the values, in other words, the inner dimensions of what makes us human, is a very important part of how we get to an ecological civilization. Of course, the technology, the innovation, the science will all be important, but we can't just rely on ourselves to intellectually think ourselves or invent ourselves out of our current situation. It's really about what we decide we value. What is our vision for humanity? A lot of the things my colleagues have said about living together, recognizing interdependence, valuing not just human life, but all life. Those are really foundational principles and values for an ecological civilization. So again, really echoing what my colleagues have been sharing and maybe wanting to add those few points as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. I feel very fortunate to be able to hear your ideas of ecological civilizations, something that might be a very new term to a lot of us, something that has already been constitutionalized for some of you, and for example, in China. And it's really inspiring to hear that all of us that are contributing to this definition are really coming from diverse contexts. So you have mentioned farmers, you have mentioned philosophers, there's educators, there are young people contributing to this vision as well. So thank you all for sharing that. And now we want to hear from you, from the panelists. What are some good examples paving the way towards this vision? And how can we scale up these efforts? So we are going to go back and let's hear again from Dr. Jinfeng. Let's see, what examples have you brought for us today on ecological civilizations?
Thank you. And I would like to take a biodiversity example. And the great bustard is the heaviest flying bird in China. But even after many years of conservation protection, the bird is endangered. The number of the total Asian subspecies goes down to about 200. It's ranked class 1 endangered species in China. The government set up the state protected area for great bustard in Inner Mongolia, but during the number still go down very fast. And why? And this is not the only case. The government set up another state protected area for some special species, and some of them go extinct. The reason is what? Because during the winter, the bird fly to the south, migratory, and the bird, after they fly up, they do not know where is the state protected area. They cannot land in the state protected area. And they just landed on the Yellow River bank. Local people started to hunt them because they are the heaviest flying birds, so it's not difficult to hunt them. They will go extinct immediately. And local volunteers, 2016, April 17th, called me. They want to protect, but local authority has not, the local government doesn't have the role to protect the state protected species because they are not in that sector. And they come to us. We encourage them, we support them, we give them a certificate, they start to protect them locally. And through this way, we set up community conservation area. We start with local volunteers to change the way of living, the way of local people's behavior, and that bird was protected in that area. After that, we set up over 200 of community conservation area with local volunteers, with people. Till today, that birds, the number of those birds go up to 2,000 and now close to 10,000. That is an example. Only the people's participation, only we change our way of life. We call in this, we are coming close to the Spring Festival, we call for new wildlife eating or gifting. And that is the only way to change the biodiversity, to slow down the massive extinction. And that which is civilization, way of life. And the civilization including ethics, culture, arts, tradition, everything we need to change and adopt our new situation. We need to adopt our new civilization. That is only solution for us, for human beings, to sustainably live on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that beautiful example. Very inspiring and good to hear that in one place, like many others, and we hope there's more examples in the chat that you have inspired, how the local people, how civil society was able to step up and help this species that we are contributing to its extinction, unless we help like the way they did. So Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker, would you like to share some examples from your context or from an example that has inspired you in your work? Oh, you are muted. Okay.
Thank you so much. I loved these comments, and I especially appreciate the ones that, like Julia and Professor Zhou, bringing up culture and values and ethics and so on, because that's something that I've been working on for maybe 25 years with many, many other people, because I think ecological civilization will be impossible, as we've noted, with, of course, we have the science, we have the policy, we have all kinds of new economics emerging, even though that's going to be very challenging, regenerative economics, ecological economics. We have technology, as Julia said as well. We have law. You know, we've got all kinds of legal systems, even though they're very slow. But we don't have yet this moral force to make the change. But again, like Julia said, we have the seeds of these changes. And I love that idea because it's on the horizon, but it's also present right now that we're working with these changes. Many, many people. It doesn't always get in the news, but it's there. And so I would say that the shift in the change of the world's religions coming on board for the moral force of environmental ethics and environmental justice is a watershed. And with the Pope's encyclical, obviously, we have in 2015, a major example of this, and the cry of the earth, the cry of the poor. I could give many, many examples, and you can see them on our Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology website. So that's one example of the moral and ethical force of religions and spiritual traditions and traditional environmental knowledge from around the world. But the other I want to just highlight is food. As Zhihe Wang said, the importance of food systems is exploding. And we were very fortunate to go with him to see the Shared Harvest Farm outside of Beijing in September with a leading woman who's working in agriculture, Jiang. And long story, but she did her degree at Renmin University. Her advisor said, go to the States, learn organic farming. She did that in a farm in Minnesota that was deeply influenced by Thomas Berry's ideas, actually. She came back to China and has set up one of the most remarkable, inclusive organic farms we have ever seen. And she has helped inspire 7,000 farms, not single-handedly, of course, but there are now 7,000 organic farms in China. This is a remarkable and fast-moving movement and a huge contribution to ecological civilization. So I'll stop there, but Xiang, big shout out for her and her work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. I wish we could all travel to these farms and these towns and seeing these examples, but thank you all of you as the panelists for taking us there and highlighting these sources of inspiration towards these ecological civilizations that are emerging. So what about you, Dr. Zhihe Wang? What are the examples that you see as paving the way? Let me unmute you real quick.
Like Dr. Tucker just mentioned, culture played a very, very crucial role in the new civilization. So I can give you two examples. One is about the Jinfeng mountain, in poor Yunnan. Yeah, we just come back from the Jinfeng mountain. There, recently the UN recognized them as the called the historical heritage site. They have, most of the time the tea, this is the bush, right? Maybe less around 1 meters, but they have some tree have 1,000 years. This the tea tree. Yeah. Why they can preserve the tree so many years? Yeah. So that's because they have their own faith. Yeah, they have their own culture, which really value, respect nature. Yeah. They have 6 gods, including the gods of insect. So I think so like the symbolic, the symbiotic. So every being play a very important role in the nature system. Yeah, the human being protect the trees, and in turn the tea and served nurture human being. Yeah. So that is kind of a very positive circle. So I think that's why they can last 1,000 years. So I hope everybody, when you got a chance, you can go to the Jinfeng mountain. Yeah, you can see there the people, they really in harmony with nature. So when that in the modern city in New York, they have the booths, right? People selling, but you have to carefully lock your door, your shop. But in Jinfeng mountain, no need. Yeah, because if you buy something, you put the money there. Yeah, if the sun side, you go home, just cover some plastic. That's it. No need, because the people trust each other. So there must be the culture behind. I think that is gave an example. It's possible. This kind of civilization is possible, right? But also today, even you just maybe imagine, oh, that's a history. But I want to tell you some recently the news story in China. That's why I like to go back to China. Every time I learn something new. Really, this time with Dr. Tucker, we went from North to China, crossed all over China. We meet a lot of new people. We witnessed a lot of emergency, some of the new civilization. Like there is recently we have called a serious lecture on ecological civilization, COP Eco Academy manager. So we invited a lady, we call her returnee. It's kind of returning farmers. Yeah. Her name is Song Na. I think probably around or less 40, right? Yeah. She went back to country. She is a designer. Yeah. It's easily for her to make a lot of money. She think I should do something for my hometown. So she went back to hometown Shandong, like a Yimeng Mountain, very, very poor area. She consciously pick one very, very poor village. The whole village, not just the design for one house, become a hotel. No, the whole village design. Yeah. So it's the number one rule when she designed the whole village is that regard the farmers or villagers as subjects. So most of the capital, as Dr. Jinfeng mentioned, lots of capital, they really want to make money. Sometimes they kick out the farmers, right? Yeah. But Ms. Song, her number one rule is regard the farmers as subject. So she should talk to each villager, each farmers, what's your strength? What do you look at to do? For example, if Mary Evelyn is good at making dumpling, okay, you can build, you can set up a dumpling shop in the village. Yeah. If Jinfeng, Zhou look good at the noodle, okay, you set up a noodle shop. So no need you go to Beijing, Shanghai, make money and left your children left, right? So no, that is kind of very disaster, I guess. Yeah. You separate mom and from children or daddy from the children. Yeah. In this way, the villagers, they can take care of their own children. At the same time, they make money, right? Yeah. So that is right now. I think we call it committee, organic committee, already host people. 16,000 people already live there. Yeah, not only for tourists, only for people. Yeah. So the local people got the benefit, the tourists got the benefit, everybody got the benefit. I think that's kind of civilization is in my mind belong to the ecological civilization. Yeah, it really really care about the poor, the weak, the farmers. That means Dr. Tucker method like social justice or eco justice. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Those are beautiful, beautiful examples. I've seen so many people who are looking for these places to live and to move to, building these eco villages, for example. So I hope that this conversation gets out there more, so that they can also, everyone that's trying to build and working on these localized examples of ecological civilizations can hear from all of you and be inspired by the examples that you have brought to us. And we have one more example, or a few more examples. So from Dr. Julia Kim, we're excited to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to draw from my experience of working with the Gross National Happiness Center in Bhutan. I think it's a country that many people are kind of fascinated with, because I think it's a country that has really looked at this question of what is the purpose of the economy. So when I said earlier that the vision and the values are really important for an ecological civilization, most of us don't really stop to ask, what is the purpose of the economy? Until now, I would say it's really been about GDP growth, about really just growing the economy, not even asking why are we growing or how much should we grow or how much is enough. And we've seen the consequences of that approach in terms of the devastation to climate, environment, biodiversity, and also that it hasn't really delivered on this promise, that even in countries that are by GDP quite wealthy, many countries in Europe, North America, that increasing GDP has come with rising inequality, and the quality of life and the happiness of people has suffered. So in the case of Bhutan and many other well-being economies, it's really saying that the purpose of the economy is the well-being of people and planet. And that doesn't sound like rocket science, but it's actually quite a radical idea and quite a different view the economy should be. So that's kind of where Bhutan starts. And there are other examples that are happening in whether you're talking about villages, communities, cities, countries that organizations like the Wellbeing Economy Alliance and the Club of Rome, which were mentioned earlier as partners, are really trying to support. So to say a little bit more about Bhutan, I would say that the Bhutanese are quite humble when speaking about this example, but we would say that it's a national level example, which makes it a little bit special that a country is trying to pull in that direction at a time when most countries are not going in that direction. I would say that it's really about asking what is the vision. And in the case of Bhutan, it's kind of unusual in that well-being and happiness is not just described in terms of material well-being, which of course is important, but also spiritual well-being. That's material and spiritual development should go hand in hand. And that already starts to broaden your idea of what a well-being economy could look like. I love this quote from the Earth Charter, which I often refer to. This line, we must realize that when basic needs have been met, human development is about being more, not having more. And I think that is really underpinning a lot of the thinking behind gross national happiness in Bhutan. Just to say that both in Bhutan and elsewhere, the basic needs part is still important. It doesn't mean you throw that away. Definitely in Bhutan, there's areas where basic needs are not being sufficiently met. And then you have to invest in building good roads and the education, the health sector, and so on. But you can do that at the same time as you're looking at other aspects. So if that's the vision, how do you get there? Well, you need measurements. You need metrics that will tell you not just whether GDP is going up, but how is happiness and well-being doing? So in Bhutan, there's a gross national happiness survey, which measures 9 domains. If people are interested, they can look on the website for Center for Bhutan Studies and G&H Research or the G&H Center. But just to say that the 9 domains include the basic needs, things like living standards, education, health, everybody needs that. But a few unusual things that many countries don't measure, like community vitality. How are our communities doing? Do we know our neighbors? Do you feel like someone's got your back? Cultural diversity and resilience. And this was mentioned by Jinfeng, by others, that the culture and the connection and the vibrancy of whether people are living in rural areas or urban areas is really part of the treasure and wisdom of a country. Environmental conservation is obviously there, and unusual things also like psychological well-being, which we know is really suffering in many countries. Time use, which particularly in our so-called developed countries, many people are time poor, but a lot of the research shows it's really important for well-being. So these are measured as part of the G&H survey to help gain a more holistic understanding of whether the country is going in the right direction. And then, of course, measurements by themselves aren't very useful unless you put them to use. So there's a kind of policy-making system where you try to look at how the 9 domains are going in order to shape policy. And again, looking at the 9 domains to say, what should we be prioritizing? What are some of the trade-offs? Because there will be trade-offs if we want to keep happiness and well-being as the North Star. So I think those are some of the aspects that I think are important, both in thinking about a country like Bhutan and maybe for other ecological civilizations, this idea of vision, where do you want to go, vision and values, measurement, are we getting there? How do we know if we're getting there? And policy, how do we turn that into action? And of course, all of that has to be underpinned by a vibrant and active and informed civil society. As Mary Evelyn mentioned, education is key in how we move forward in this good governance is also one of the 9 domains and has to be really supported if it's going to be materialized in the way that decisions are made. So I think there are other well-being economies that I mentioned. I won't have time to go into detail here, but again, echoing that the seeds of these initiatives are out there. They just need to be nurtured and prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. And it's really nice to hear your example from Bhutan, especially these measurements and metrics for ecological civilization. Of course, there are lots of factors such as cultural, religions, psychological well-being that we need to consider about instead of just economic index. So really appreciate this example. And our third question for this webinar will be, what are some additional paths and driving forces to build these just, sustainable, and peaceful societies? So let's invite Dr. Tucker to share your ideas on this question.
Well, thank you again for the examples that have been raised. And I think, as Miriam said at the very beginning, the Earth Charter is a leading example, I think, of a declaration of interdependence, of something that brings together ecology, justice, and peace. And that, I think, can be a guiding document for ecological civilization. I can say a lot more about that, and was very privileged to work with Miriam and many others on the drafting of that. But I think that represents the mindset, the shift that is still being birthed in our times. But I wanted also to highlight what's happened in China in a very sketchy way, but to say this is working forward in China, but it's also working forward in the West, and that's very exciting. So I wanted just to say, in about 12 years' time, from about 2006 to about 2018, a whole range of changes took place, which I think we should note just for the historical foundation of this. And again, I'm not going to mention everything, but Han Yue, who was the Minister for Environmental Protection, and in 2006, he wrote a very important article on ecological civilization, and he's written many, many others. I have them in English. I really want them to get published here in the West to see his thinking, because he's drawing on the traditions of China to say this notion of human-Earth relations are critical. So he's quite a remarkable leader, as we know, and with Wang Zhihe, we met him again in September, and he's more than ever committed to this, and he's part of the State Council now, so a very influential position. But this idea of ecological civilization has been working through the various People's Congress from 2007 all the way up until the present, for this building of an ecological civilization in 2007. In 2012, 5 development goals for this. In 2013, EcoCiv reforms. In 2015, a 5-year plan. In 2017, the universities began to create centers for training people in ecological civilization for government and other policy institutes and so on. That's a real commitment. And finally, in 2018, it went into the Constitution. So this isn't just a word that's being thrown around. Xi Jinping, of course, is behind it in a very strong way. But to have something like this in the Constitution is remarkable, like rights of nature in various countries at present. And I think as well, I just want to say one of the parallels here in the States has been what's happened at Claremont with the inspiration of John Cobb and the hard work of Wang Zhihe and his wife May in 2006, one of the first conferences on this ecological civilization, and the very large one that Professor Cobb organized, 1,500 people, was it, on seizing an alternative, building an ecological civilization. So this is what's exciting about this East-West dialogue that we're involved in right now. That we're beginning to draw, and again from Bhutan, what an extraordinary example that is, that we're beginning to draw together these examples, ideas, and again, I want to emphasize principles and practices that will bring us forward to realizing ecological civilization. And that's what's really exciting. It's not utopian, it's hard work, but it can be the cooperative efforts of East-West dialogue and including traditional environmental knowledge from all over the world, as well as these environmental justice issues of who's suffering from these problems the most. So thank you for the enthusiasm that I hold, and I think many of you do, for this very complex aspiration towards ecological civilization.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker, for sharing with so many pioneers with us, especially the mindset change is very important for both Western countries as well as Eastern countries like China. And I believe with joint efforts, and then we will achieve this equalization at the end. So Dr. Zhou, what's your idea on this question? Oh, you are on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to mention diversity. And today, I think it's very important to accept, to tolerate with diversity, including political diversity, cultural diversity, civilization diversity, and Eastern, Western diversity. We should accept, because in biological diversity, we realize diversity is the life, is the sustainable way of living. So we do not only need diversity in biological, we also need diversity in culture, in civilization, in ethics, in politics. And with the tolerance and acceptance of diversity, we can live, survive, and evolve to a new world. And especially today. And we have quite a lot to learn from Western civilization, and also I believe Western civilization also learn from the Eastern Western civilization, and through those learning, mutual acceptance, we all have seeds of ecological civilization. We all have seeds of wisdom to survive, to change from the industrial civilization to the ecological civilization, to live a sustainable way of living on this planet. So, and like, for example, we would like to emphasize on people's participation. We would like to emphasize on, for example, the climate issue. We would like to say we are born equal of carbon rights and the carbon responsibility. So through that basic idea, the industrialized countries need to spend more efforts on saving energy, save materials, save the and those developing countries, and the need to adopt a new way of development. And so I would like to repeat, diversity is the way, and the collectiveness is a very special key to face the global emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou. And yes, diversity is a very important driving force to ecological civilization. And by the way, if you have any questions, we have lots of participants in this webinar, and if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A function to raise your questions, and we will invite the experts to share their ideas on your questions. Thank you. And let's turn to Dr. King. What's your idea on this question?
You know, I'm thinking that for many of our listeners, and even when I join webinars like this, I often ask, I do, if there is a path forward, if there is a movement going forward, There's just me and my little life. What can I do to be part of this? And I think we should not underestimate the power of that, given what Mary Evelyn and others said about interdependence, given the fact that how we choose to shop or what we choose not to buy, how we prioritize the policies that our governments are putting forward, how we can either encourage or scare politicians from making more daring choices in protection of the environment and biodiversity. Our voices and our habits actually matter. And I would say that part of that is also to kind of look at what are some of the conditions and things that we are exposed to that maybe put us in a more negative and more consumptive mode of being. I have to say, as somebody who's spent a lot of time in both the East and the West, I have a constant East-West dialogue going on in my mind and in my heart. And I often feel a lot of culture shock, not so much when I go to Bhutan, but when I come back to North America. Because some of the things that I notice, for example, is the way that social media and the news and marketing puts people in a constant state of not having enough, and how that drives a lot of the kind of overconsumption that we see without delivering the happiness and the sense of well-being that people are actually looking for. So that is something that's within our power to kind of filter and to change and to experiment with, to be creative with. I think the COVID pandemic and the kind of shortages that people in more industrialized countries dealt with had some interesting effects also in terms of what people discovered was important to them and what they discovered they didn't need. And I think to not abandon those lessons, those seeds of wisdom that Jinfeng mentioned, is important. So we can experiment, we can make those changes, we can encourage that in our communities and with our politicians and with our governments. And I think the last point to say to that is, I think a lot of people, particularly in the younger generation that I'm talking to, don't want the same things that their parents and grandparents were chasing after. They don't necessarily want the big gas guzzling cars. They don't necessarily want the big prestigious jobs. They actually want a meaningful life. And they're actually asking a lot of really good spiritual questions, probably because they're encountering the kind of existential questions that maybe my generation or previous generations didn't face. So that's a huge opening, that there are people who are saying there's got to be more to life than this, than just climbing the career ladder, shopping and getting a bigger house, and in brackets, destroying the planet. So that's a huge opportunity for how we think about education, how we think about creating jobs that are meaningful, how we give our politicians courage to think about creating new ways of living and new opportunities. I would say that the personal and the political and the community and the global, they're all interconnected, and not to feel that, we're just watching a webinar and then we go back to business as usual. So I think that's kind of what I would share on the path going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Yeah, it's very, very important to notice the impact of social media and also the impact of education. So I think that's really something we can start with, the education part as well as social media part. And Dr. Wang, what's your idea on this question? Oh, you are on mute.
I think this is really a good question, Sifan. And our colleague already mentioned a lot. I want to highlight 2 points. First, the oneness of theory and action. Yeah, like Juliet has mentioned. The reason why in the past 20 years in China we can establish more than 30 centers, I think one of the main reasons is that because Dr. Cobb is a person who walks his talk. Yeah. So in this on this trip with Dr. Tucker, so I realized that Dr. Cobb also a person who preach his preach, right? Yeah. So she already didn't shopping new clothes for 25 years, right? Yeah. I think Dr. Cobb for 30 years no new clothes. Yeah. So when you talk these things to the Chinese young people, they feel shocked. Yeah, they really feel amazed. Yeah, I think that's the kind of one action. I think more worse than thousand word, right? Thousand article. It's very important. This is the one thing I want to mention. So that's why we launch a movement called "Count Me On" or "Count on Me" 就说 that means everybody we can do something. I think eco civilization doesn't mean one person does a lot. That means everyone does a little. Yeah, there's a Chinese we like to say, and fire burn high when everyone at the wood, right? 众人拾传火焰高. That's the point. This is the one point. The second one is I want to mention in order to promote the new civilization, eco civilization, we also need to promote the people to people diplomacy, right? Yeah, I think that's it's very, very important. When you read article, it's one thing, but once people to people, it's another thing. When people look at your eyes, people know you are not lying, right? Yeah, so they are more easy to believe you, to trust you, and take action. Yeah, I think lots of Chinese young people, they grew up by watching Friends, the TV show, right? People think that's American life, right? Yeah, that's sitting there, dressing up, talking every day, laughing. It's not American life, right? American, yes, maybe some Americans life, but to my personal knowledge, experience, a lot of American people, they are very decent people. They work very hard. Yeah. For example, we have nearby where I live, there is a small organic farm. Yeah. Maria is the founder. Every week I went to there to do some shopping. Yeah. You can see, people there work very hard, they feel very happy. That's also American life, right? The same thing in China. China not just have the supermarket in Shanghai, Beijing, you go there shopping. No, I think in China right now, there are a lot of eco-village. Also, we have called the 书院, like ecological academy. They not focus on exam. They focus on how to transform people. Yeah. So that is the kind of thousand emergency, this new kind of school in China, eco-village. Yeah. So we Dr. Fan like used one word called wild chickens. Yeah. Right now, those people, the modern university like training the domestic chicken, they're just waiting for the food, right? Yeah. We observe knowledge and give away the knowledge. Those kind of in the eco-village, people learn how to build the house, right? How to make a tofu, right? That's if really ecological disaster happen, those people can survive, right? So wild chicken, they know how to find the food, right? Yeah, I think that's also China, right? So I think if we can organize the people, Chinese people come to US to do the ecological tour to see what American people really doing, and the American people go to China to looking for not only American, any other country welcome to China to see there are some really eco village eco academy people what they are doing. I think they are the how to say the new power, new force of new civilization. Yeah. We should let the people exchange each other, learn from each other. That's become more and more powerful. In Chinese, we like to say, 人心齐，泰山移. If everybody works together, we can remove or move the Thai mountain. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for outlining those driving forces that you have seen. I know as panelists, it's really hard to feel like you're representing your entire country or your entire culture, and especially when you're living in one or two, or traveling back to your old culture and learning, as Dr. Wang told us. So thank you all for summarizing everything you have been working on in these 3 questions. We really hope that we get to hear from you more in the future. And we have some questions from the audience. So I am going to start with the ones in the Q&A section, which are coming from Ms. Alice Tekaiti. So Alice, you have asked, how is ecological civilization applicable to small island countries in the Pacific communities who have been impacted by climate change? And then Alice also asked if you have seen or heard of a checklist signifying features of an ecological civilization that have been achieved worldwide, and what is there to strengthen? Okay, so yes, so Alice is asking about people living on small islands impacted by climate change. How does this apply? How does ecological civilizations apply to them? And is there a checklist for ecological civilizations? So let's see. Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker, would you like to tackle this question first?
Well, thank you, Alice, for such an important question. And clearly the small island nations are leading in many ways the issue of the climate emergency, as we like to call it. And some governments have named it climate emergency, including the UK and Ireland and so on. So this notion that the seas are rising, that we're at this tipping point, that people are very, very vulnerable, especially in low-lying areas, coastal areas, and the island nations. So I think what has been very important at the UN is the ability of people to stand up, the Maldives and so on, and the example of having a cabinet meeting underwater to illustrate this climate emergency and so on. And then also bringing forward the traditional knowledge base of Fiji and many of these islands and what's being lost. So I guess what I would say is, are these places able to be a burning light to the rest of the world to say what is happening, what is being lost? And my heart breaks in so many ways because of these issues. But I think their voices in the UN has been very, very important, quite extraordinary, actually. And so that is something that we can continue to hope for, support, and so on. And your other question about a checklist, that's a very interesting question. I don't know of a checklist yet, but I think Miriam passed to us yesterday a document that's 265 pages of key words in ecological civilization. And I think this is an extraordinary document, actually, in both Chinese and English. And it gives many examples of what's happening in China, the energy, solar panels, wind, and fast trains and so on, which are positive and in the right direction. So that's a very important document, key words in ecological civilization. Thank you, Alice, for those questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Evelyn, Mary Evelyn Tucker. I want to chime in and just invite Alice to also read the Earth Charter document. Although it's not a checklist, it's not specific goals like the Sustainable Development Goals. I think once you read it and go through the pillars, it will help you also strengthen your vision for what an ecological civilization is and work towards it. Dr. Kim, would you like to help us with this question as well on what about climate change and how is that affecting small islands, people on small islands?
Yes, I don't have so much more to add to what Mary Evelyn was sharing, except to say that a lot of the actions that are needed in order to look at mitigation and resilience are in some ways the same kinds of actions that we need to be taking now in other countries that haven't yet experienced what's going to be coming. So in some ways, it's not like those of us who are not facing the immediate rising sea levels can rest on our laurels and think maybe we can wait and we don't have to make those changes now. And in fact, the kinds of values and vision and the building of community and the strengthening of good governance, those things that need to happen to make small island states resilient and to be able to respond, they need to be happening everywhere right now. So I think there are important lessons to be had. And also, I think the important role that global actors need to be making now in order to make sure that we're prioritizing these countries that are going to be feeling the brunt first, that are already feeling the brunt, because of this factor that we are, in fact, all connected. So I would share that. And in terms of the checklist, I wish it were that easy. I think some of the principles, I think that you yourself mentioned, like the 4 pillars of the Earth Charter. Now, gross national happiness also has 4 pillars. I think these are really important. They can maybe be translated into things that can be measured and checked off. But again, I think those principles, getting them into important founding documents, getting them into constitutions so that they can then be codified and they can then be measured and people can then be reportable and accountable to them. That's kind of where we need to be starting. And then it will be manifested in things that are more easily measured, like checklists.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, especially your idea on how to develop the checklist. And also thank you, Mary, for your answer to this question. And we got another question from the chat box, and that's from Jin. He has a question generally is, how can we make ecological civilization more appealing to the public? In other words, is how can we balance the current people's economic needs and people's ecological civilization mind? So Dr. Zhou, can I invite you for this question?
Thank you. I would like to mention a little bit on the small island states question first. And we participate conference meetings of small island states. And we think everybody should try to understand, to feel the way they feel, and to make important, to make enough attention to it. Secondly, we have many movements, campaigns regarding, and for example, we have Good Food Fund to promote less meat and good vegetable for eating, and we have Slow Food Fund committee to promote local food and local time, and we think eco-civilization can play a very important role on the small state island states issues, and that's part of it. And then I come back to the question and about the eco how we can make it more appealing. It's really hard. I think the only thing, the driving force we believe is, I'm sorry to say, the natural disaster. We are facing more and more natural disaster. We are facing more and more difficulties, and that is a very important lessons for us to learn. And more tornado, more forest fires, more a lot of flood, and that is the nature. The nature is telling us, and of course we need some inside motivation and appealing ways. We believe tradition, history, heritage are very important. For example, I always tell this story about the Buddha. And we know the Buddha we have in China, almost everybody knows a story about the Buddha cut his flesh to feed tiger. And that's a very important tradition, heritage, and culture, part of not only religions, but also culture. The Buddha, 2,000 years ago, already realized that all lives have to live together. We need, without other lives, we cannot survive on the planet. That beautiful story is quite appealing to many people. And we need to dig from our culture, tradition, old Asian civilization to find out those ancient ideas, spirit, and that is also a way, a appealing way for us to promote eco-civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou. And like you said, currently it's not for us. It's not only a true option. It's more like something forced us to do it because of the natural disasters as well as other climate-related risks, and also the traditional culture for wisdom for us is also something we can consider about. And Dr. Wang, what's your idea on this question? Can you share your idea with us?
About the the small island, I have one sentence to share. I want to probably that's really on the one hand is a really bad thing, right? On the other hand, probably I think as your island, I think can become a kind of education center. Okay, so we can invite people come to your island to see what's it really mean by interconnection, right? Yeah. So that's why that's reminding me of think that there's a doctor called Dr. Wang from Malaysia. Wen Shi. Malaysia, she told us in this time in poor, in Malaysia, 6 states is going to be by the ocean, swollen up. Yeah. This is so, but why she come to China? She wants to see because China, Malaysia, you cannot separate it, right? When disaster happened, right? Yeah, no one is island. Nobody is safe. So should help each other. I think that's like Dr. Jinfeng just mentioned. Should help each other. That's very that's the key word. Yeah. So in Chinese, Chinese like saying 同舟共济. There's we are on the same boat, right? No matter where you are. So that's it. It's time to stop. To argue which table we should put, which dish more beautiful, right? In the sinking Titanic, right? Yeah. So right now we should work together to save the boat. Yeah, that's our planning. And about also the how to can reach out more people, the mainstream. I think the social media is very, very important. Yeah. I think we study white-hat philosophy or process philosophy. We don't believe, okay, every day if you only fight, so all philosophy it worked. It's no longer work. But how make it work? We build a new philosophy, right? We build a new thing. When we have the new thing, the old things fade away, right? Yeah. I think rather than just fighting with the old thing, we just better build a new thing. So make people feel hope there. Make people feel more, able people testify, experience this kind of life, they feel more happier, right? Why not? So more and more the people will go to that way. Yeah. So that's it. There's probably when I hope you can visit the Bhutan Shanxi province. People there, not like sometimes our ecological civilization promoter activities were worried. We want to, overnight, people listen to us, right? It's not good. First, you should embody the life you like, right? You should live out the life you really dream of. So when we went to the Bhutan, the Shanxi, the rural community, people really relax. Zhengbing, the lady said, of the founder of the Bhutan community said, this is our land, right? Yeah. They don't work hard for the fame, for reputation, not for money. They live there. Their ancestors live there. So that's why they just live the way they feel very calm, very enjoy life. I think that if everybody will live, or even including our promoter of ecological civilization, everybody will live our way. People will eventually, wow, well, that's kind of a life I want to live up. So people will follow. That's my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. Yes, thank you all. And thank you, Sifan, for accompanying me through this moderation. We're almost coming to the end of our time together tonight or this morning, depending on where you are joining us from. So I'm going to read some of the comments in the chat and some of the questions, the final questions. And we're not going to tackle each of them individually. So I am going to call on everyone to give one final message. Maybe you will be inspired by these comments. Maybe you will be inspired by everything you have heard tonight. And we will bring this to a close. So Pradeep Mahapatra, you have said there has great interconnectedness of ecological civilization, putting community, culture, nature, livelihood, and lifestyle with the triple planetary crisis. So with biodiversity loss, climate change vulnerability, etc. So thank you, Pradeep, for making that connection. Thank you, everyone who joined the conversation about the small islands. Thank you, Ron Phipps, who was brought to the chat. Political diversity is a virtue, and it requires freedom of dissent, debate, democratic processes, progressives of human civilizations. So what Whitehead called the adventure of civilization requires diversity of view and analysis. So do you agree that zoological, botanical, intellectual, and political diversity must be integrated? We also have, let's see, one more question. And then we also have Joan Anderson asking us, how can we address the sense of powerlessness that people feel when they become aware of the perilous state of biodiversity and life on Earth? So thank you all for joining the conversation in the chat. Our panelists, thank you so much. We want to hear from all of you one last time with your final message. These ones will be a little more brief, so we can wrap up the conversation, but it was really wonderful to have you here joining us today. Let's see, Dr. Kim, Julia, would you like to get us started on sharing your final message?
Sure. I might maybe reflect a little bit on this issue of a feeling of hopelessness or despair, because certainly it's something that all of us go through. And I think something that has been encouraging for me is really when I speak to friends, colleagues in Bhutan, which is deeply influenced by the Buddhist tradition there. And what Jinfeng mentioned also, this idea that we are interdependent, very similar to Ubuntu. My happiness depends on your happiness. I don't exist without you existing, really, is how you would say it. And that expands your sense of what is possible. And I think to have a connection to a worldview that is bigger than my individual rights and my day and my future, ironically, instead of making you smaller, makes you bigger. And I think with many of these traditions, along with that expanded sense of self, is an expanded sense of time. So I've had the chance to do some interviews with indigenous wisdom keepers from many traditions recently. And what I hear over and over again is very similar to what I've heard from long-term meditators and Buddhist contemplatives, which is that they're not really operating on the same sense of linear time, past, present, future, and my life now, that many of us are kind of pushed into when we're always on our emails and our smartphones. And when your sense of time expands beyond your lifetime, it doesn't mean you get lazy and you stop caring and working for the changes that need to happen, but maybe it relaxes the sense that I need to see the results on my watch. It gives you some confidence and some faith in doing the work today for the things that may happen in the future. And we don't know if that future is next year, 10 years from now, or in your grandkids' generation. So I would say in response to that, to really touch into some of the wisdom traditions, if possible, to cultivate a personal practice, and there's many, that helps give you that sense of a self that is not bound by your physical lifespan and by your sense of time. And that can be a real source of inspiration and encouragement to keep doing the daily work and getting up every morning, even in the face of the challenges that we're seeing. Thanks.
Thank you. I really like that phrase you said. Instead of making you smaller, it makes you bigger. It also connects back to that phrase from the Earth Charter that it's about being more, not having more. Let's see, Dr. Jinfeng Zhou, can we hear from you?
Thank you. Let's learn from each other and work together to understand the fourth civilization, ecological civilization, towards a new, better, and sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Exactly. And what about you, Dr. Zhihe Wang?
Let's remember what the person philosophy teaches us. You are bigger than you are.
Thank you so much. You're bigger than you are. Yes, we are. And Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker, let's hear from you.
Thank you. I love what everybody has said. And I just wanted to pick up maybe on Ron Phipp's points, and that is, for sure, biological diversity is a virtue. And for sure, and this may be our biggest challenge, that politics needs to be integrated, as he put in his message, with ecology, with botanical diversity, as Professor Zhou keeps saying. And this kind of integration of all the institutions and all the systems with biological diversity, with ecological systems, and so on, is our greatest challenge. I think we can do this. It's going to be imperfect. We're in a period of breakdown to hopefully break through. And I really salute my colleagues here, the work they're doing in Bhutan, in China, and elsewhere. And Miriam, thank you so much for hosting us, and for our two moderators. I'm so grateful for each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker. Thank you for what you said. I'll highlight what you said. We are in a period of breakdown, but we are going to break through this. And yeah, we can do this. Thank you all for your inspiration. Thank you everyone for joining. This was recorded. So if anyone wants to share this, maybe you have students, maybe you have colleagues, maybe you have friends who need this kind of inspiration. We had so many good examples at the beginning. We shared visions of what ecological civilization is. If this is a new term to you, if this is something that you have been working on for years now and that you're spreading as well. This will be on the Earth Charter International YouTube channel and on Baidu as well. So thank you for joining us. We're a very punctual group. We are finishing right on time, and this won't be the last conversation we have. So please stay tuned. We have your contact information, so we will be sharing upcoming events. And we hope to see you also at the Earth Charter Education Conference also on ecological civilizations and how education can contribute to these in Winter Park, Florida, near Orlando, Florida, in the United States. You can find all that information on the Earth Charter website, which is earthcharter.org. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will leave the chat open a bit more in case you want to share your contact information, say any last messages. But we're really celebrating the fact that we were able to have this conversation tonight, this morning, for some of you who are just getting started with your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.